So what's the difference between an A, a B, and a C neighborhood when buying rental properties? Hi there, I'm Clayton Morris, the president of Morris Invest, and that's today's topic. All right, let's dive into it. So what is the difference between an A, a B, and a C neighborhood? You've probably heard these terms thrown around quite a bit. First, let me say that there is no exact hard and fast rule as to what an A, B, and C neighborhood is. There are some loose terms, but it's a pretty good gauge for real estate investors when they're looking for properties to acquire. So let's start with the big boy. What is an A property, an A-class property? Well, typically an A-class property is your nicer homes, bigger homes in a great neighborhood with a lot of bells and whistles. So it probably has garages, probably has garage door openers, it probably has central air conditioning units on the outside of the house. It's probably going to cost a good chunk of change. You're probably going to have folks who are living in the properties who are paying a pretty penny to live there and rent there. The best school districts. Really, these are your A-class properties, A-class neighborhoods that you see, high rises that have all the bells and whistles. If you think about your neighborhood, you probably have those properties that are in the $200,000, $300,000 range. Those probably are your A-class properties, right? They've got a lot of space, they've got a lot of yard, parks at the end of the street. All of those things kind of have the hallmark of an A-class property. They are also going to be the properties that have the biggest problems. Surprisingly, surprise, surprise. I never buy A-class properties, and if you talk to a lot of high-level investors who own hundreds of properties, they hate or will never buy an A-class property again. Why? You tend to have the biggest issues with tenants in A-class properties. They cause the biggest headaches, they complain the most, they will call and complain about the slightest thing. This is no joke. One of my investor friends who owns $800 million in properties says he will never buy A-class properties again. He had a tenant call late at night into the office because the cabinet was slightly misaligned on one of the doors, wasn't swinging perfectly closed. Really? Okay. They're also likely the ones who are going to, you're going to have vacancy rates, interestingly, during a recession, higher than you would in your C and B class neighborhoods, because higher income, those are the people most affected by a recession. It's those upper income earners who live in A-class properties where you're going to have the biggest problem. Also, you have more bells and whistles in a house like that, which means it's more expensive, and it's more expensive to fix. So all of the properties I own, I don't have central air in the homes. If my tenants want AC, they bring a window unit. It's as simple as that. These bigger homes, you have bigger air conditioning units to deal with, garage door openers, all of those extra bells and whistles that you don't have in some of those other neighborhoods. So just bear that in mind. That's my personal preference. I will never buy another house in an A-class neighborhood ever again. B-class neighborhoods. What's a B-class neighborhood? A B-class neighborhood is really that transitional neighborhood. It's the one that's on its way to becoming that A-class neighborhood. You're going to pay a little bit more for it than a C-class neighborhood, of course. You tend to be able to get a little bit more in rent, but a lot less than your typical A-class neighborhood. So you can still find some real value in a B-class neighborhood. It really is that transitional neighborhood. I tend to find, though, that I end up paying more for the house in a B-class neighborhood and not really seeing that much more of a significant rent increase in a B-class neighborhood. So I own a few B-class properties, but I tend to stay away from it. Why? Because I would rather buy in a C-class neighborhood that's on its way to becoming a B-class neighborhood. I'm able to buy the homes for cheaper. I'm able to find distressed properties. Let me give you an analogy here between a C and a B. Really, if you think about a B, I like to think of it as the grandmother who lived there for 40 years, and she kept the house really great condition, but it's dated, right? It's got maybe wood paneling on the walls. It just has that really dated look to the kitchen and the amenities and maybe old carpet, but she kept it in great shape. So the integrity of the house is strong. You're gonna find that in a B-class neighborhood, so the rehab won't be as much, okay? Now, a C-class neighborhood, you tend to find properties that are, 40 years old or older, that need probably a lot more work than grandma's house, maybe have been sitting vacant. You have some vacant properties in C-class neighborhoods. I buy a lot of vacant properties, but there's a lot of value add available in a C-class neighborhood. So you probably have some distress. You probably have a good amount of work on the rehab, so it's not a light rehab when you walk into the home. You're probably gonna have to put a new roof on it, new windows, new plumbing, new electric. Very often you'll find that the furnaces have been ripped out of the house because they sat vacant for years. Great. That's the uglier, the better. Those are the types of houses I buy. That way I'm putting in, if I buy the house for $15,000, $20,000 and I put $20,000 into it, then I've got a rock solid, almost brand new house down to the studs renovation. New plumbing, new electric, new roof, new wiring, new flooring, new carpet, new cabinets, new paint, new hardware, new landscaping, everything. Rock solid house, and then I don't have to worry about repairs for 15 to 20 years. So the value you can find in a C-class neighborhood, I think exceeds what you can find in a B-class neighborhood. That's why I personally love it. And what I also find is that in C-class neighborhoods, there are a lot of stereotypes out there that I actually find really offensive about the types of renters that are in C-class neighborhoods. My renters are hardworking, blue-collar, fantastic Americans who work hard. And if you drive down those neighborhoods in the afternoon, you don't see people fooling around and kicking trash down the street. They're at work and they work hard. And you know what? We give them a great house when they come home at the end of the day. That's the type of tenant we rent to in a C-class neighborhood. So I think there's this perception that's totally wrong about a C-class neighborhood. I love them. That's my difference between an A, B, and C-class neighborhood. Personally, as you can tell, I'm sure, by my voice, I love buying C-class properties. I can get them for a lot cheaper, put a lot of value into that property, and then get a really high return on my investment, a really high ROI. Because after all, that's all I care about, return on investment and cash flow. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions about anything and you'd love to pick up your first rental property, please visit our website. The link is right below here. We'll walk you through the process and see if it is a fit for you. Thanks so much, everyone. We'll see you next time.